Major protests outside the annual conference of Germany's far-right AfD party. Its candidate for Chancellor is promising mass deportations of immigrants. Can Alice Wiedel's views help her party win more power in a general election next month? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Since its founding in 2013, the AfD has become a major political force in Germany. The far-right party is polling second ahead of a snap general election next month. Analysts say it's unlikely to seize power because the major parties are refusing to enter into a coalition with it. But the AfD could have a significant say in the new Bundestag, as the government would be under pressure to reflect its vision. The party's candidate for Chancellor, Alice Wiedel, is calling for a tough policy on immigrants. Her manifesto also includes Germany leaving the euro and reversing its decision to abandon nuclear power. To what extent will Weidel's views strike a chord with voters and enable the AfD to become an important player in German politics? Or will centrist voices halt its rise? We'll discuss these and other issues with our experts in just a moment. But first, this report by Victoria Gatenby.
In the eastern town of Riesa, the far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, promised supporters a radical manifesto ahead of a general election next month. Its candidate for Chancellor, Alice Wiedel, said a key policy is what she called remigration.
We have a plan for the future of Germany, which we will tackle in the first 100 days of government participation, close the borders completely and turn back anyone entering illegally and without papers, and send a very clear message to the whole world.
Weidel also said Germany must reopen its coal and nuclear power stations, resume gas supplies from Russia through the Nord Stream pipelines, and tear down wind turbines. More than 8,000 protesters opposed to the AfD gathered outside the venue, shouting slogans such as "No to Nazis."
For us, the AfD stands for exclusion, for hatred and agitation. We want to show very clearly that we are the majority, that we are in favor of open borders, for a society based on solidarity.
The AfD was founded in 2013. It's popular in eastern Germany, which was communist-ruled until the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Germany's domestic intelligence service has classified the AfD as a potentially extremist party since 2021. But tech billionaire Elon Musk is a vocal supporter. He interviewed Weidel on live stream on his X social media platform on Thursday.
I think only AfD can save Germany. And I just want to be very clear about that. Only AfD can save Germany. End of story. And people really need to get behind the AfD, and otherwise things are going to get very much worse in Germany.
Germany's other parties have ruled out working with the AfD, but its supporters have been buoyed by recent events in Austria, where the far-right Freedom Party has been invited to try to form a government. All this led Spain's Prime Minister to warn last week that fascism could return to Europe. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our guests now. They're all in Berlin today. Olaf Boehnke is the Director and Senior Advisor of the Alliance of Democracies Foundation. Jessica Berlin is a non-resident fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis. And Ulrich Brueckner is a Professor of European Studies at Stanford University in Berlin. A very warm welcome to all of you. So Elon Musk has said that the AfD is the only party that can save Germany. There is a lot to unpack in that statement and indeed in the person who made it. But I want to start, first of all, by hearing what you make of it, what your first response was when you first heard it. So, Jessica, let's start with you.
Well, first and foremost, what struck me is Elon Musk's clear ignorance of German politics history and our political system. With a sort of trite statement like only the AfD can save Germany, it begs the question, save Germany from what precisely? His subsequent interview with the AfD leader, Alice Wiedel, was full of blatant falsehoods and mischaracterizations of German history, including notoriously the description of Adolf Hitler as a communist. These kinds of statements from Musk don't really have the kind of sway in Germany that they do, and perhaps in the US, where he's better known as a personality in politics. However, it is nonetheless extremely, of course, disturbing and influential because of his ability to control the algorithms of X and thereby push the accounts of AfD members and supporters, and likewise depress the accounts of others who don't support the policy positions he's trying to promote. And so there is real concern in Germany right now about the threat to our democratic system that this poses. And in response, actually, several dozen universities and academic institutions the day after that interview quit X. And the German government is currently considering also leaving the platform someday, perhaps.
Yeah, so it's had quite an impact. Olaf, what was your reaction to it?
Well, I'm watching elections and election interference since 2016. So the US elections, when we first accused the Russians of intervening. And with Musk, actually, we see an unprecedented example how it works out if the one man actually with the power of a platform like X actually can, by his own mind, actually interfere in not just Germany. So we are seeing in parallel his interventions in the UK. We have observed how he has intervened in Brazil, accusing the judiciary here heavily and criticizing the government. So it falls into a kind of a global pattern. And in a way, actually, so as Jessica just said, actually, so he's ignoring fact checking. He's ignoring all kind of works against disinformation on online platforms. And the interview in his space on X with Alice Wiedel just proved that. So he was giving her the stage for sharing really incredible false information about Germany. And even he was the one questioning her statements. So he's legitimizing a radical party here, as he has also done with UK reform of Nigel Farage. And I'm afraid, or actually, so my guess is that this will not be the only interventions. And the question is really, is he still a business leader, or turned he himself actually a political actor?
Ulrich, to what extent do you agree with both of those analysis of the situation right now, and how concerning Elon Musk's involvement in Germany's political scene is?
Well, I agree with the analysis, but I think we shouldn't take this performance as what we usually do when we look at talk shows in which the general motivation is to find truth or to convince the other side that my line of argumentation is superior over yours. We now have a long history of populist communication strategies, and this one is not about the quality of what has been said. This is a performance in the framework of an attention economy in which it doesn't matter whether you send lies or false information or absurdities, because it pays in the fact that days after this, we sit here and discuss whether it makes sense to call Hitler a communist, or whether something is an empirical fact, or maybe history was something very different. This is not the point. The point is that both are partners in arms to fight the liberal system, the Germany that we know, and the discourse culture that we represent. They are masters of disruption, and to call it in Lenin terms, Weidel is a useful idiot for someone who benefits from chaos in Germany.
I suppose the point as well is how much impact, Ulrich, it actually has, and how much more support the AfD party will now have because of Elon Musk's.
Well, when you started to present the AfD, you called it an important player in the political system. They were around 10%. Now, with the help of the Ampel, like the government that just ended, they are currently up to 20%, which still means that 80% in Germany have a very different opinion about what the country should be like and what direction we are heading. So 200,000 people watched this on X. And we sit here and talk about it, so that yes, they are in the news and that pays in. But even supporters of Alternative für Deutschland were making fun of this rather trivial conversation that politically doesn't really provide substance and answers to the pressing problems of the country. So I don't expect things like this to be of a major game changer in the elections. But of course, it is very concerning, not only that there is a party like Alternative für Deutschland, but the richest man in the world gives a party like this a floor that can be used to dismantle institutions, to spread fake news, to do everything that we have seen in other countries in which parties of that caliber turned into an important actor. In Austria, we are on the edge of having one of them becoming the next chancellor.
Jessica, you asked the question, save Germany from what? And that, I think, is quite pertinent because two of the biggest issues in this election or this snap election coming up is migration or immigration and the economy. And the AfD is campaigning on one of its biggest platforms to re-migrate people in Germany. Can you give us an idea of what that means and how it's resonating with people there?
This notion of remigration, as the AfD are dubbing it, was coined by right-wing nationalist Austrian political figures, in fact. And it's the idea of basically kicking out all the legal and illegal immigrants in a given country based on their quote-unquote refusal to integrate or if they've committed any crimes. And the important thing here to note that's different from general calls to send back illegal immigrants is that it's also applying to people who are here legally. And even in the AfD's case, they have talked about even trying to kick out actual German citizens who have somehow an international heritage if they break the law. So it's a grave and very likely illegal policy proposition that many are also calling, quite frankly, far-right and Nazi-like policy of ethnic cleansing or ethnic restructuring of society. However, it's very important to note here that all of the AfD's proclamations like this, or in particular, statements from someone like Elon Musk, they are nowhere near as helpful to the AfD as the failures of the past government, the Traffic Light Coalition, and the Grand Coalition that preceded it to bring everyday Germans' quality of life forward, and also to really deal with the challenges that did occur in German society due to the refugee crisis. So the country certainly faces real challenges, and the failure of the traditional centrist parties, whether center, left, or right, to deliver on change and bring the country forward are ultimately the things that are pushing the AfD more than any interview with Elon Musk could.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Olaf, to what extent do you agree with that? I mean, obviously the AfD is taking the extreme view on this issue of migration, on perhaps the economy and energy as well. But to what extent is it on the table? Because, as Jessica said, the failures of the current coalition government and past coalition governments, and also to some extent the media putting these messages, these anti-immigrant messages and Germany in the doldrums economically messages in front of people's faces, putting it on in the mainstream media.
Yeah, as I said, so for me, this is a global pattern. So we can discuss this for Germany, but as Oli said, so we have the very similar situation and discussion right now in Austria. We have the same in France. And if you look into the talking points of these parties, it is every time the same playbook. So this is exactly the media-driven attention, the attention-driven media actually system we're living in. The age is so everyone is jumping on these trains, and the longer we start this conversation, so people think, okay, this is a legitimate argument the AfD makes, and this is what Musk is helping with. And so Ulrich cited Lenin actually, and the question even is maybe even Musk is the useful idiot in this game. So I have read a very interesting interview with Steve Bannon in Bloomberg this week, in which he said, okay, Musk can repeat what he has done in the US everywhere in the world. He has the money, he has the means with X, actually, and he demonstrated how he can run a public discourse just by this. So he created this by inviting Weidel and gave her the platform, and immediately everyone is jumping on this train and discussing what they have talked about, even if it's meaningless, because it is not really. I don't believe at all that this is really the conversations people are concerned about. So we have a huge issue with economy right now in Germany. We have an issue with infrastructure, and the AfD, as well as Trump did before, actually, is selling this good old days. We bring you back the good old days narrative, which is, of course, comfortable for the constituency to believe in. But it's also very easy because you can blame every time someone else. Now it's the migrants. We have seen it with whoever, actually, the Jews in the past. So this is also what Jessica referred to. So he's completely ignoring the historical contexts in Germany, and he's just falling into that trap. The question is if he has a broader agenda here. So I can also see a business agenda behind his actions, because he's always in this very libertarian view. Actually, he's going after those who try to keep the democratic discourse intact. So he's against regulation. He's against fact checking. And we have seen Mark Zuckerberg following the same lines, because he's so afraid actually that Facebook and Meta actually will be the next, which will be killed by Trump. So he's kind of surrendering in this camp, and this is a global trend we can see everywhere, and this is what's really concerning to me.
So, Ulrich, do you agree with that? I mean, why is Musk so interested in boosting the AfD? Is it because it reflects his libertarian values? Is it because he's got his Tesla plant in Germany? And what does he get out of it?
Well, I think a lot of party members and supporters of AfD would not even know what libertarian is. But they are useful in the sense that they are interested in the same distance towards the functioning institutions that are an essential part of a Western-type democracy, because this is about checks and balances. And we have seen that populists hate media because they are looking for the truth. They hate academia because they're looking for the truth. And they dislike institutions because they limit their room for maneuver. And the European Union, as one level of governance that helps to fix problems that the nation state is no longer capable to address, they came up with a restriction for global business people like owners of platforms with the Digital Service Act to fight for the values and principles that make Western-type democracies work. So Elon Musk is attacking not only Germany, he's attacking the European Union for the ability to ban hate speech and everything that is polluting the discourse and the political culture in our open societies. And the Alternative für Deutschland and Elon Musk have the same interests. I also see the connection between Steve Bannon in Trump 1 and Elon Musk in Trump 2. The main difference is that Musk has far more firepower, and a weakened Germany and a dismantled institutional system is in both interests because they benefit from chaos and disruption.
Jessica, Europe is clearly concerned about the rising influence of Musk, or the interference of Elon Musk in its particular countries, in its democracies, with, of course, the exception of Italy and Hungary. Also, as I've said, Meta getting rid of fact-checking, that's going to become more and more of an issue. There is this Digital Services Act available to Europe, but how might it use it to keep these social media companies in check, to stop them from giving an unfair political advantage to whomever they choose to support?
Well, the EU certainly has the opportunity to regulate these platforms more strictly and to fine them or even ban them from operating in the EU outright if they refuse to meet certain standards of content moderation and editing of disinformation and blocking illegal content. However, as with anything in the EU, these discussions will take time. And there is certainly no consensus within the bloc on how to deal with this, because, as you mentioned, there are even members who are sympathetic to the right-wing voices that are being amplified and to the hate-filled content that is being allowed to spread in these spaces. I wanted to also, however, touch back on the previous points around the global dimension of the rise of the AfD and Elon Musk's support for them. We have to remember that this is all taking place within the context of a global hybrid war being led by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea against the West and democratic states. This has been ongoing for years and has certainly been only increasing in the last 5 years, going after our infrastructure, sabotage, hacking attacks, and of course, election interference and the spreading of disinformation. So these attacks from without on free and fair elections, on the democratic processes, are happening at the same time that also these actors, in particular Russia and China, are actually supporting and pouring money into parties and platforms that also are helping to destabilize democratic processes within. So we have to see this as part of a global trend of an attack on democratic institutions and states from actors both within and without those democracies who want to see this system fall.
So, Jessica, are those institutions strong enough to withstand it?
Well, that is the question of the century. At the current time, I think it'll get worse before it gets better. People working in these institutions are still people, and they're still, I think, in the stasis and denial phase. They smell the smoke, but they don't see the fire right in front of them yet. And I fear that it'll take things to get worse before we see the kind of urgent action needed to protect our institutions more fully.
Olaf, let's bring it back to Germany and hone in again on the rise of the right, the AfD. I mean, it already has 76 seats in the Bundestag. That's some 10% of the parliament. Is it likely to get more in this election?
That's for sure. They will get more. But the question is, we had 3 regional elections in the end of 2024 in East Germany, which gave us a good indication of what might come up in this federal elections, for sure, in 4 years of now, with the next one. So my assessment at the moment is we will see a solid government built by, at the moment it looks like, by CDU, Friedrich Merz, the front runner, with either the SPD or the Greens, or maybe, if the results are not as positive, with the 2 of them. So, and again, another 3-party coalition. And the AfD will be by far the strongest opposition party. They have already been the strongest opposition, of a strong opposition now, right after the CDU. If CDU and the others end up in a government coalition, then the AfD is most likely the biggest opposition now, with a lot of privileges in the German political system, which gives them, again, more stage time to spread their messages and influence the political culture in Germany. So therefore, I don't see any options for the AfD to enter government this time, but coalition building will be way more complicated under the circumstances right now.
And Ulrich, in this position of a powerful opposition, how much pressure can the AfD put on the governing coalition to bend to its will, given that it's going to have quite a lot of support from the German population?
Well, the support in the German population shouldn't be overestimated. And if we see that there is something like the pendulum is swinging to the right, we should also keep in mind that the pendulum has been swinging to the left for a very long time. The Germany of today is no longer what Germany was in the 2000s or the 90s or even before. One of the reasons why Weidel disliked Merkel and her politics so much is the fact that Merkel moved the Conservative Party to the center, because in Germany you win elections in the center, and the establishment parties that represent a vast majority and of which the next coalition will be composed, in a new 2 or 3 party coalition. This expresses that Germany became much more pluralist and diverse and open to a lot of influences that have a lot to do with the fact that Germany was for a long time an attractive country that attracted cosmopolitans because of its reputation as a cosmopolitan society. So if the pendulum now swings back to a more conservative or a more fear-driven attitude towards migration or climate change, it is not a complete rollback. It is concerning, but it is still a different country than it was in its history.
Jessica, you said before that it was the failures of the current and the previous governments that has led to the rise of the AfD in Germany. Do you think with a likely conservative coalition coming into power following this election, if polls are to be believed, that they will succeed in drowning out the AfD voices, that it's had its day and that this will be the end of it?
I consider that unlikely. Thus far, the CDU, the Conservative Party, has shown that they're very ready to reach out to AfD voters by sort of dog whistling with xenophobic rhetoric, if you will. And this is certainly an electoral tactic. They want to win votes, but it's damaging in the long term because it shows that rather than really going at the substance of what it will take to bring Germany forward, to improve quality of life, the economy, public services, education across the board, we have serious problems here and systems in decline. And instead of articulating to the German people really seriously that they understand where these problems came from during the Merkel era and under this past government, and now they've understood and they have real clear vision and strategy of how to make change and improve Germany and German people's lives. Instead, their electoral tactic is to try to lurch more to the right in their rhetoric in the hope of getting more voters. So I think this is not a promising start. In my opinion, I think a coalition between the conservative CDU and the center-left Green Party would be the best way to bring Germany forward because it's a coalition that has not existed yet in German history. So no one can just point fingers at it like a grand coalition repeat, which for a lot of people in this country would seem like back to business as usual. The same coalition that got us into this mess is now back in power. And I think that would only fan the fires of the AfD.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting few weeks ahead for Germany. Many thanks today to all our guests, Olaf Boehnke, Jessica Berlin and Ulrich Brueckner. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. For further discussion, do go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X and Instagram. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Laura Kyle, and the whole team here, bye for now.